Mortgages, Dallas Cowboys Crosstalk.
Check this out.
Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco. Brought to you by Blockchain.com. Invest like your icons with Blockchain.com. The National Medal of Honor Museum. Join the mission at mohmuseum.org. Buffalo Wild Wings. If it's game day, Buffalo Wild Wings is the place to be. Alltech Lansing. Just listen with Alltech Lansing. Perfecting sound since 1927. And by SWBC Mortgage. Customized solutions to help you meet your personal and business goals. Visit SWBC.com. Now your hosts, Nate Newton and Bobby Belt.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to Cowboys Crosstalk. We are live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco. Thank you for joining us on 105 Through the Fan and on DallasCowboys.com and all their various platforms. I'm Bobby Belt from 105 Through the Fan. Tonight I'm joined by my 105 Through the Fan teammate, Alec Medford.
Alex, big dog, big man, what's up?
As always, you just heard him. We got the three-time Super Bowl champion, six-time Pro Bowler Nate Newton here with us tonight. How was the guest chair last week? Did you
great.
Enjoy it?
It was great. Yes,
it was a great episode. If you don't get a chance,
pay increase too.
There you go. See, Nick knew you were going to love that part especially. And our special guest tonight is a former first-round pick, a two-time Super Bowl champion, and the number 2 player in Cowboys history in sacks after he's passed by one DeMarcus Ware. It is Jim Jeffcoat. Jim, thank you for joining us tonight.
Glad to have you, brother.
Absolutely. Appreciate you appreciate you joining us here tonight. So I told you guys I primed you a little bit. I let you know I was going to throw a trivia question at you because you guys share something in common with two other guys that you played with. So you are you each are one of 4 players who spent at least 3 years with the Tom Landry Cowboys and then were present for both of the Jimmy Super Bowls.
Yes.
Right.
Do you know who the other 2 were?
Bill
Tony
Bates
Tober.
and Bill Bates.
That's
and,
one.
Tober.
And Mark Tuinay.
Boom. See, Jeff got it. Bates and Tui. That was the ones because Tolbert was.
I forget about my blocking mate too.
Yeah.
Well, I love that.
But you got to remember, Tolbert came in.
He came in.
He came in with Michael in '88.
Yeah.
So,
How you remember all that, man?
Shoot, I talk to Tolbert every day.
He gonna let you know, ain't he?
Exactly.
He gonna let you know.
So because you guys have that unique distinction, though, of being 2 of those 4, along with, like we said, Bill Bates and the late, great Mark Tuinay, talk a little bit about that experience, Jim, for you of being here through kind of exiting the prime years of America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, getting up through the 80s when you know, the twilight years of the Landry team things were starting to become a real struggle, and there was a lot that people felt like, you know, what is there even to cheer for right now? These football teams aren't playing very well. And then getting back to the heights of it with Jimmy Johnson and that new crew. Talk about just that transition period and what it was like, I guess, in those darker moments where there was that lull and you were kind of wondering, are we ever going to pull out of this?
Well, you always think that, can we get out of it? But the thing is, what happened is you had guys like Tony Dorsett who went to Denver. You had a lot of guys that were at the end of their career or close to the end of their career, and that was tough. While you had bad draft picks between myself and Michael Irvin, there wasn't a guy that was a consistent starter that was a first-round pick. So that hurts you, and just, you know, we didn't have, and me and Nate discussed this before the show started, we didn't have a lot of guys that had an upside and that could come along and help us get better. And that's why you had only 4 players that transitioned to that from that Landry era. You had Randy White and Ed Jones were there the first training camp, but both of those guys retired at a certain amount, and a lot of guys were gone by the time we got to Jimmy Johnson.
You know, it's something that I think Nate, you've referenced this before. I know in interviewing other guys who were with the team during that era, like when they first got here with Jimmy, and hearing some of the interviews that have been done with Jimmy and others in there, was that they realized pretty quickly when Jimmy got here, all right, need a culture change. There's some holdovers maybe that aren't totally buying into what Jimmy's selling here, what we want to accomplish. Or maybe Jimmy just looked at it and said, these guys aren't fits for me. I need something different here. What was it you think about your group there, those four we just referenced, but for you specifically, Jim, what was it for you that you think saw you through that and connected you to the Jimmy era teams where Jimmy said, you know what, I can win with that guy, and from your perspective where you said, I buy into what's being sold here. This is something that I think we can get on board with.
Well, I don't know if Nate remembers this, but he would always say, we're going to practice like champions, we're going to play like champions, because we will be champions. And that's how we did it. I mean, he had some good things, and he didn't treat everybody the same. Don't believe that, because he always had guys. He said, if you're on my good side, it's like heaven, but if you're on my bad side, I'm waiting to get rid of you, and that was the thing. But he was, to me, he told you how he felt. He would always tell me, he said, hey, because I'm the head coach, I got it, but I'm an old D-line coach. And he said, I love D-linemen, and I got to have my D-linemen. And he built his teams through the offensive line and defensive line, and that was big with him, to have guys that could rotate on the defensive line and tough and physical offensive linemen.
Nate, for you, why do you think you guys were able to carry over through two really different coaching generations that viewed things, through different lenses?
Coach Landry had that culture. Him and Gil Brandt drafted the Randy Whites and Tony Dorsetts and Tony Hills and traded for what's my running back, Preston Pierce and guys like that. So Dave was ready. Timmy Newsome, then Jeffcoat, Herschel Walker. They had a great culture, but they let it get old.
Yes.
Much like a lot of our guys now are older. We have some young guys, but we don't have older guys that are peaking, like Jeff was trying to say, that are peaking and in their prime to show you how to be a professional. These guys were great, man. Randy Wright, and I told y'all last week how he gave me just advice on how to be a professional. But he was leveling off, kind of dropping. So Jimmy came in and ran like a combine, and he was disappointed. He was like, these guys are not fast enough. Great players in their day, hell of a players in their day, but they're not fast enough. I'm going to keep the guys like Jeffcoat, Nate, who's got what I need, and we're going to build from there. And that's how he built this culture. Like he said, we're going to practice like champions. We're going to play like champions. And his main thing was after Troy signed, then Jimmy signed his long-term deal. And he stood up in the meeting right out in the old veteran and said, Troy just signed, and I just signed, and I'm going to be here longer than any of y'all. So, if you don't like what I'm doing, I'll get rid of you.
Somewhere else. Yeah, that's what he said.
He was not trying to get a hold, how we doing now, trying to, if we trade, Parsons, hey, we trade Parsons, we can rebuild a team like Herschel Walker. He was for real. He like, if I can get back then we had, 12 rounds?
Yep.
If I can get a 12-round pick for you, I'm good. That's just how much he wanted to change how he wanted guys to think and how he wanted guys to practice. And it was a threat because there was no salary cap. There was no salary cap, so it was a threat. The day they cut you, that's the day your money ended. Yeah.
You're talking about like that culture and that intensity that the coaching staff and the organization brought back then. 15 seasons at such a high impact position like you played, it's unheard of. Like nowadays, do you think that culture being instilled in you early helped lead to like even have the idea of having that kind of longevity of double-digit years playing such a crazy position?
No question, because you got to remember, I came in and the starters were Harvey Martin, Randy White, John Dutton, and Ed Too Tall Jones. And those guys taught me, just like Nate said, how to be a pro. They were pros. They were pros. And then my position coach was Ernie Staltner, who
Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Hall of Famer. And he was 6 foot and about 235. And he's in the Hall of Fame as a D lineman, and things like that. So I learned the proper way, and I listened to him. And I'd be in the meeting. Me and Randy would go in the meeting for hours and watch film. And he'd tell me what he saw, so I understood what we needed to do.
For a guy to watch as much film as Randy White did, when we had our team meetings after the games, we'd all come together.
I remember that.
He would be the guy to get, Randy, great play, but you should have stepped this away. Once again, Randy, great play. But Randy would go watch film, say, I can make this play.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So he would step out of line maybe 6-7 times a game, but it'd be great plays. But right here, Randy, you need – I used to be like, wow.
Yeah, and he used to bring this piece of wood to meetings. And every time Coach Landry called his name, he'd have his knife and start whittling.
Yeah. That's funny, man.
It's you guys going through that period of being there in the early Jimmy Johnson years and the success that came with it. And I don't know if people remember it now. The narrative back then when Jimmy was hired was when you guys started struggling early, it was, these are college guys. They're not cut out for the league. They've made a mistake. They don't know what they're doing. And I think from the media perspective, or the way it's been told from the media perspective, has been the coming out party for you guys where it's like, this team's for real now, or they're about on the come up, they're about to get here, was when you guys went to D.C. and beat the undefeated Washington team in 91, the one that went on to win the Super Bowl. When did it hit for each of you where you felt like we've got something special? Was it actually earlier than that? Was it even a moment in the game, or was it something during the work week? When did it hit for you where you thought, this is something that's going to work, like it's just a matter of time?
Well, that year we went to the playoffs, and we lost in the second round to Detroit.
That was the next year we went to the playoffs,
next year.
right?
91, you lost to Detroit.
Yeah, we lost to Detroit, but you could see it coming. You could see it because we beat Chicago in Chicago, if you remember.
Yes.
Yep.
And and you could see it. You could see we were getting more talented and better. Just like Nate said, there were guys that were feeding. They were really believing in what was being accomplished by Jimmy and that staff. And we had coaches that made us believe in what they were selling.
Let's
let me say this right quick.
Hit it, Nate.
We lost that game against Detroit. And remember, we was in the coaches too, but we were in there celebrating. And Jimmy flew through that door saying, hold on. And I can't say the words that he said. He said, but if you think this is where it ends and begins at, you've lost your – boy, he went off.
Yep.
And even to the coach, he was looking at the coaches just as hard as he was looking at us. He said, and by the way, here's the schedule for next year right now. And he's probably set us up.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? He probably set us up. He was a calculating soul,
Yes,
man.
he was.
Yes, he was.
And it clearly resonated and led to a lot of success for you guys. The year after that Detroit loss, like you guys talk about, that was 1992. That was the first Super Bowl year. And there was a move that was made in 1992 that garners a lot of attention, and that was the move for Charles Haley. We're going to take a break real quick. Before we take a break, I just want to set this up on the other side. I want to hear from you, Jim, your thought process in terms of the competitor in you versus, the man in you who's got some pride and says, do you need to go get somebody really to come in here, or am I going to be enough? So I want to talk about that thought process for you. And how that developed for you over the course of those 2 years, and how you guys managed to maintain success when egos could have easily gotten in the way. That's next on the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk.
Go Cowboys!
Back to SWBC Mortgage's Dallas Cowboys Crosstalk.
Yeah, check this out.
Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco.
At SWBC, customized solutions for individuals and businesses are just a click away. Visit SWBC.com to learn more and start your next adventure. We are live from the Cowboys Club, the Star in Frisco, for the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk on 105 through the Fan and DallasCowboys.com and all social platforms for the Cowboys. I'm Bobby Belt from 105 through the Fan, joined by Alec Medford, my teammate at 105 through the Fan. We've got the 3-time Super Bowl champ, the 6-time Pro Bowler, Nate Newton over here. And then our special guest this evening is one of the most prolific sack artists in the history of the Dallas Cowboys and a 2-time Super Bowl champion himself, Jim Jeffcoat. Jim, thank you again for joining us today. We asked this question. I was kind of teeing you up for it before we went to break. I remember Darren Woodson had talked about the move to go get Thomas Everett. And he said when you bring in Thomas Everett and you've got James Washington and you've got Ray Horton and you've got these different guys, he said it's a competitiveness that really helps build everybody up. It brings everybody up. But there's also naturally a little bit of ego that comes into there where you've got some pride and you say, I should be playing over him or I should get that opportunity. You guys in the defensive line room, they talked about pass rush was going to be such a critical thing. They bring in Charles Haley in 1992. And even in that 92 season, when Charles Haley had a massive impact, it was actually you that led the team in sacks that year with 10.5. Talk a little bit about that same sort of thought from Woody or the one that Nate's talked about before when you have Ron Stone and Larry Allen and all these guys that are in a competitive room. How did you guys, and specifically for you, how did you manage those ideas of, hey, this makes us a better team, this is going to make us a better group, but I still have some pride in my level of play and what I can bring to the table?
Well, interestingly, Jimmy calls me in his office and said, hey, we're gonna trade for Charles Haley. I need you to do something for me. He said, call Ronnie Lott. I've known Ronnie Lott since I've been in high school. I was recruited by USC. And I called Ronnie and asked him about Charles. And he said that this guy's going to work hard. I said he was a hard worker. He said he was a hard worker and that he's going to compete and he wants to win. He said, but he's crazy. And then he said, and then I asked Jimmy, I said, what is my position on there? He said to me, he said, you my guy. He said, as long as I'm here, you're going to be here. And he said, I'm going to even make you more valuable. He said, I'm going to make you the Dennis Rodman of the NFL. He told me that, and he said, I'm going to make sure, because he said, you play every play, and you're getting at that age where that's tearing you down. He wanted to keep me fresh to rush quarterbacks, and that's what he told me. He said, I'll make sure, and he said, you'll be paid like a starter, which he did, but he said, you'll have to rotate now, which it helped me. It extended my career.
Is that something that obviously offensive line's a different position where, you're kind of expected to go out there and play start to finish. With defensive line, with those rotations, do you guys get hung up as much on the idea of did I start or not, or does it matter, am I in there in the critical moment? Am I in there late?
That's the thing, is you're in there in the critical moments, and you're in there to make an impact, because now I can look at the game, because I just, like I told you earlier about Randy and Ed, they taught me the game. So I could see offensive linemen, how they're blocking, what plays they're running on offense. And when I walk in the game, I know what's coming at me and how they're going to try to attack us.
It's something you just mentioned there. You talked about, you called Ronnie Lott, and Ronnie said he's going to work hard. And Nate, I know you had mentioned to us last week, you mentioned to us prior times before that for you, the way that you started working hard was not even out of for love of the game. It was, I'm not going to disappoint these brothers of mine who work hard. I'm not going to be the reason that their hard work is wasted. So when somebody sees a Charles Haley and says, man, he's such a, dangerous personality to have around, But if he works hard, what is something that, what's a trait for each of you found during your playing career that you said, I can't have that, though? Because obviously a Charles Haley personality said, I can work with it because he works hard and he does this. What are the things that you guys found that you said, I can't, that's not going to cut it? I'm sorry, that's a line for me, and I'm not going to have that trait in a teammate on this football team.
But
go ahead, Nate.
The thing about it, though, we were man enough that if he crossed Jeffcoat, he gonna tell you like, hey, I don't play like that. And I'm serious. And we didn't have to front each other in the locker room. Hey man, we can be walking to the car. Hey man, what you did today, that can't happen no more. You know. And Charles respected that. I respected that. You know what I'm saying? When you hit the line with a real man, he gonna let you know, and then he ain't gonna say much more about it. You know, that person that keep yapping, you can get him tomorrow in the locker room.
Yeah.
That person, hey man, no more of that, and they just keep walking, and they meant what they said.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've always appreciated about Charles, and he was crazy.
Still is.
But he made you accountable because he made himself accountable.
Yes.
And that's the thing. And you talked about the difference between eras is we had guys that were accountable because you walked in that meeting room and you had a bad game. You were going to hear it.
Yeah.
And it was worse, not from the coach, but from other players. What are you doing on that?
Yeah.
Why are you playing like that? So you didn't want to be that walk in that meeting room and play not well.
You were talking about earlier in the previous segment some of the guys that kind of helped bring you up and teach you the game the right way. After the Charles Haley trade, fast forward a couple years, maybe like that 1994 season or so, did it ever sink into you that I need to become that guy that kind of taught me how to be the next guy? Because you're still out here hanging double-digit sacks in a season that you're that you're not even full-time starting. Was there a moment that you kind of realized, like, I need to step up and be that vet now?
No question. When Ed and Randy and those guys left, then I became the older player in the room. So I owed it to the Tony Tovers of the world, Russell Marylands, the Jimmy Jones, Chad Hennings. I owed it to them to help them because somebody helped me get to a level.
I'm curious, you went on and had a extensive career in coaching. You were at the University of Colorado for a long time, did some coaching there. I know I think the last time you coached was a few years ago. Was there a point where during that time where you had become the veteran leader where you started to see some of that stuff that you went, I think I'd like doing this when the playing days are over. I think I'd like to still fill this role and become a coach. Or was coaching just something that kind of came on, was something that caught you by surprise and you walked into?
What happened is when Chan Gailey got hired, they called me about possibility of being on his coaching staff. And I really honestly didn't think about it. But then I went and talked to Chan, and he said, well, I got some guys in mind, but if it falls through, then I'm going to give you a call. I said, okay, no big deal. And he called me, and I was with a gentleman named Jim Bates. And Jim Bates taught me, just like players teach you about playing a position, he taught me about coaching.
Was that something where, when you got into the coaching realm, you look at it and you say, is that how quickly was it that you started to see those traits blend in and you started thinking less like a player? Because I'm sure right off the field, you're thinking more like a player in those first early days. When did that mindset change to you where you felt like you were looking at things more like a coach and your thought process had become more like that?
Biggest thing you see is, and I learned was as a player, you depended on yourself to prepare for your game. But as a coach, you have to depend on your players and make sure they're prepared for the game and put them in a position to be successful. You can't expect them to do everything that you did because everybody's abilities are different. So I learned that as I went in, especially in college. You can't, you might yell at them, but you also got to hug them and tell them you love them because they're 18-year-olds, 18, 21-year-olds. And the same thing you do in the NFL, you got to learn that, and that's the transition from being a player to a coach.
I noticed something recently. I was talking to a college coach friend of mine, and he was saying that the biggest thing that a lot of these linemen have trouble with going from college to the pros, offensive and defensive linemen, is that when they first get up, very few of them actually know how to use their hands.
Yes.
That so many of them just went on their ability where they're just so much more athletic than the guy across from them, or they're so much more talented, and that when they get in the NFL and everybody's talented like that's when they get kind of a rude awakening of, hey, you've got to be a technician at this level. You've got to start looking for advantages. How much of that was a focus for you when you would bring up defensive linemen through the college ranks of, like, how much of it felt like, hey, the job is to win and get my guys ready to win right now, while also potentially preparing them for what could be next and making sure that they're prepared players going into the NFL?
Well, the biggest thing is to teach them how to play the game, because a lot of them in high school, they don't teach you the same thing. They're going off the athleticism. But as you get older and then you're in the NFL or college, you have to learn to use your hands. You have to learn to see things through their eyes and what they're seeing. I always ask them, what are you seeing? And make sure that they see the same things I did. I had to teach them that and make sure that they understood what we were trying to accomplish and how we were trying to accomplish. And then you got to give them energy. You got to come in with energy, because young players are going to feed off your energy. What me and Nate said with Coach Landry, he was very, very rigid in what they did, the flex defense and the offense. He did all that, but Jimmy was high energy, and that just got you going. And the practices were tough and physical, but you knew that you were going to go through a grind, and it wasn't going to be long. They weren't long practices, but they were
45 minutes.
Yep.
Nate, do you remember early on 1986 when you get here to Dallas and you're out there practice? Do you remember some of the early practice moments against Jim Jeffcoat and
oh man,
how you handled those?
I didn't practice against Jim much because he was a defensive end, but Randy White, John Dutton, guys like that. What's the other tall gentleman name? Him and
Don Smerrick.
Yeah, all these guys, man,
and Kevin Brooks.
They followed behind Randy.
Yep.
And Randy was going to give it to you, bro. Randy was going to give it to you. And so he practiced every day like it was his last day, man.
Yeah, we didn't even like the pre-practice against Randy.
So you had to come to work. The only thing that kind of got me was Jim Myers was our offensive line coach. Bless his heart. He's no longer with us. But Jim was not a technician. He was smart.
Yes.
But he didn't teach hands and technique and punching and that happened when Jim Erkenbeck came. So it was hell dealing with Randy because I didn't have that technique. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have that proper technique, man. Bless his heart, man.
Let's go to break real quick. When we come back, we're gonna put the coach Jim Jeffcoat put his mind to use. We're gonna have him analyze what he just saw this past weekend against the San Francisco 49ers. Get Nate's takes on it. I'm sure Nate's got a lot of passionate thoughts about what occurred out there on the field against the 49ers. That's next on the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk.
Go Cowboys!
Back to SWBC Mortgage's Dallas Cowboys Crosstalk.
Yeah, check this out.
Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco.
At SWBC, customized solutions for individuals and businesses are just a click away. Visit SWBC.com to learn more and start your next adventure. We are live from the Cowboys Club, Star in Frisco, for the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk. Thank you for joining us on 105 to the Fan, DallasCowboys.com, and all the associated social media platforms. I'm Bobby Belt from 105 to the Fan. I'm joined tonight by my 105 to the Fan teammate, Alec Medford. We're calling him Big Al. Is that right, Nate? Is that what we're going with? We're going with Big Al?
Big Al.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it. And I like it. I'll take it.
Superstar track runner.
Yes, indeed.
Legend says.
We've also got the three-time Super Bowl champ, six-time Pro Bowler, Nate Newton, with us here tonight.
Yes.
And our guest this evening, you just heard him there, it is Jim Jeffcoat, the number 2 man all-time in sacks, just behind DeMarcus Ware, who broke that record, I believe, in 2012. But before we get into the 49ers game, Jim, when you saw that day coming where DeMarcus Ware was going to pass you in Cowboys history and in sacks, was there any part of you that was like a little bit of pride of just like, hey, this is a record that stood for a little while, and to be passed by somebody who, it took a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest rushers of his generation, to pass my number? Or was it still a little bit like that, it would have been nice if that record would have just held up forever?
I didn't really care about it, to be honest with you. At some point, because if you remember, Ed Jones had over 100 sacks. They just didn't count it. Randy White and Harvey Martin. So, that was the thing. It didn't affect me in any way. And it's just records. It's just records.
So when we let's talk about records, specifically 3-4. That is what the Dallas Cowboys are today, after a game that was a little confusing against the 49ers in terms of, I think there were some things that you could take out of this game that are real positives. There was not, they didn't get bullied the way that they have typically in some of the other games against the 49ers. They really looked early on like they were, playing the run a lot more disciplined. San Francisco wasn't able to take advantage of things with Jordan Mason. In fact, it wasn't until Jordan Mason went out with an injury and Isaac Guerrero came in that they started getting the run game going a little bit in the second half. But it's a game where the Cowboys ultimately fall short, 30-24. Jim, you watching that game on Sunday night, what did you take away from that game as a bigger picture thought for the Cowboys out of the bye and with 10 games left?
Well, the thing is that they're giving effort. And at some positions, they might need more talent at it, but they're trying. But the thing they have to do is you got to anticipate some things. You have to see it and understand how people are going to attack you and where they're going to attack you, and use what you have and use that to help you get a little better. I think the Cowboys are in a situation, me and Nate talked about it, is that they got to find some players that can make plays, and they have it in Overshawn and a couple other guys, but they got to find more, and they got to get healthy. They got to get healthy.
Nate, I know you're always looking at those big boys up front and the way that they're playing. I actually felt really impressed with, in general, the way Tyler Guyton battled. I thought Cooper Beebe had a nice game. Some of the twists and stunts that have given him problems. He looked like he was, it didn't look like there was a moment of panic the same way it has on tape. Overall, obviously a disappointing performance from the Cowboys offense until late where they're pushing things. But how did you think the young guys performed coming out of the bye week and the outlook for them moving forward?
Just okay. I'm going to continue to say this week in, week out. And people going to be like, man, here you go again. But I'm talking about being successful. We were leading, and all of a sudden the 49ers come out and score, and we just abandoned the run. Why? Two things we could have done. If we could have been stayed the course on the run, it would have helped our defense. We got third and fourth and fifth teamers on our front line. Mm-hmm. You're asking these guys, like Jeffcoat saying, we're asking guys that were on practice squads to hold up against a physical 49ers offensive line. And I knew that wasn't going to happen, but we didn't do anything offensively, and they started getting after Dak a little bit better. So It's just we have to be better. Coach McCarthy, he has to be better. Yeah, you can't say we're going to run the ball, and then every week, for some reason or another, you abandon the run. So that was kind of disappointing. But to your question, I think the young guys are getting better. Guyton has to believe in his talents. Your arms are too long and your feet are too good. Believe that what you're doing in the weight room, along with your technique, and just continue to do this, do your job. Just do it, man. Just go play. Go. Sometimes you just got to free yourself.
You said this team needs to get healthier, and especially on the defensive line, you're missing your first, second, and third edge rushers specifically. And you're talking about guys, as Nate mentioned, practice squad guys that are only suiting up in Guardian caps and T-shirts, going against each other and going against air. How tough is it not having that vocal leader and that guy like a DeMarcus Lawrence that has been there, done that, it's great to have him in meetings, but, you need him there on the sideline to say, here's what I'm seeing and whatnot. That veteran presence has to be huge, not having that
It's
there.
very important because he's seen a lot of things, and he understands how they're going to attack you. And you can tell somebody how it's done, but if you can show them how it's done, that is more beneficial.
When we look at the performance in the run game, it felt a little bit like the run defense was more disciplined and was playing better, like we talked about early in the game. And then you look up at the end of the game, and it's give up 220 rushing yards, and it's not much of a consolation prize to say, well, it didn't feel like it, because the reality is it was 220 rushing yards, and you lost the football game in large part because of it. Jim, when you look at the Cowboys' defensive line, and obviously they're down a lot of players on the edges, they're not down on the interior. They're first-team guys, Oso Odigizua, Mozzie Smith, their first-round pick last year. They're in there. How critical is it for, the Cowboys, and really just players, coaches, whatever else, to say, hey, well, we're hurt. I can't have you lacking at all. You've got to be playing at the level that you're expected to.
Well, I think what's happening is that it's all about fits. And especially in this era of football, everybody spreads you out. And the linebackers don't understand the fits because you say these defensive linemen, and they're not getting off blocks fast enough. But a linebacker can always make you right because he's moving. And if he sees Mozzie Smith in the wrong gap, he just goes one gap over and things like that. Make the guys right. Norton and guys we played with, Darren Smith and Nate talked about this before the show, this is what speed does. When you have fast guys, if you're in the wrong gap, they're just going to replace you. They're going to go either way, and that's the thing you got to understand. And a lot of times you have to meet with the linebackers and understand what they see and what you see. The linebackers, the safeties, the defensive line have to work together in the run defense to make it successful.
It's been said a lot about Mozzie Smith that, a lot of times it's the get off on the line for him, that when he's getting out of his stance quickly and he's getting into the chest of the line, then he generally wins the rep. And what happens is that when he's slow out of his stance, he's the last one, and linemen are able to get their hands on him. He gets in bad positions, and he's kind of washed out of the play. As not only a guy who was a long-time veteran player who had a lot of success rushing the passer, but also as a coach, when it comes to that get-off, is that something that's sort of just innate, it's a trait, or are there things that Mozzie Smith can be doing in terms of work he can be putting in to get better at his snap anticipation?
You come out of your hips, your feet will follow, and you throw your hands. And you come out of your hips because that's where your power's at. And you bring your hands, and they're there. You throw them. And, sometimes you're going to be, but the majority of the time, you're going to be in the right position. You're going to be in the right position, and that's what he's got to learn. Come out of your hips because he's a big guy. He's over 300 and something pounds. Use that power to help himself become a better player. Somebody's got to teach him that. Hips, hands, and feet. Your feet will follow. Everything will follow.
Before we get to take a break and go to the Atlanta game a little bit, Nate, I'm curious, to that end, I remember Tyler Smith talking about the difference between playing guard and tackle. He said guard, everything happens so much faster.
Yes.
Like it's boom, it's on you. How much of an advantage is that for the opposing offensive line when they feel like, man, in an area, in a space where everything happens so much faster, this guy's not getting off the ball quick. And I feel like I can get into him and, get him out of the play. How big an advantage do opposing offensive lines probably look at that?
Inside, we love that. If we can make our deuce blocks, our double team blocks easier to slip up. If a guy's slow, like I said, if you ain't throwing your hands and knocking me back or jerking me or throwing me off balance a little bit, I can just slip you. Or I can just deuce block you. And now that linebacker has to guess at that two-way goal because we got you caught in a vice. So it's everything. Like I told Jeff before the show, I'm like, man, I'm not one of those guys that like to go out and coach because I've never done it, but you have. So, if you was to go say something to him, it'll have an impact because you have coached. Now, I don't like guys just running out there just because you was a great player. That don't make you a great coach. You know what I'm saying? But if you work with players and you see something that, you may can add to the because he needs help. I mean, he needs to be reached somehow, some way.
Yeah, and especially right now with teams looking like there's a vulnerability here that they can take advantage of a lot of different things in the run game. We're going to come back here on the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk. We're going to take a look ahead a little bit to the Atlanta Falcons, a really dynamic offense. We talk about running game, two really good running backs that Dallas will be going up against when they travel to Atlanta this weekend. We've got Jim Jeffcoat with us here. We got one more segment here on the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk. We will be right back.
Win donation. Go Cowboys!
Check this out. Broadcasting live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco.
At SWBC, customized solutions for individuals and businesses are just a click away. Visit SWBC.com to learn more and start your next adventure. We are live from the Cowboys Club at the Star in Frisco for the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk. This is our final segment. We're going to take a look ahead at the Atlanta Falcons. I'm Bobby Belt from 105 through the Fan, joined by Alec Medford from 105 through the Fan.
6'5", 235 pounds, baby.
In my dreams.
Yeah, soaking wet. 6'5", 235 pounds, soaking wet for sure. We got Nate Newton, the three-time Super Bowl champ and six-time Pro Bowler with us. And our special guest this evening is one of the most storied pass rushers in the history of the Dallas Cowboys, a former first-round pick, two-time Super Bowl champ, and an accomplished coach as well, Jim Jeffcoat. Jim, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it. Appreciate your insight. And we're going to borrow you again here, some of your coaching insight to take a look ahead to this matchup with the Atlanta Falcons. Big story this offseason, obviously, was the move of Kirk Cousins going from Minnesota to Atlanta, and they've started to really click into place and have some success. There were some questions early on, first couple weeks. People said, okay, is Cousins totally back from his injury? He looks really comfortable now. The pass catchers look comfortable. You know, Kyle Pitts is kind of clicking and coming into his own. Reminds me a lot of the Vernon Davis situation. When Vernon Davis was coming out, it was a high draft pick, was considered the next one, and it took 3 or 4 years for him to finally click and make it.
Same with the kid that went to Jacksonville who left the Giants.
Yeah, Evan Ingram.
Yes.
Same sort of thing.
But
and
the thing
so
with Pitts is he's bigger than both of those guys.
He is.
Have you looked at the film?
Yeah.
He is terrifying. And so they've got some really good players on offense. They have struggled at times to stop the pass on defense. Conservative defense, doesn't blitz a lot, but tackles really well, keeps everything in front of them. As we head into this game, Jim, and we'll kind of go around the room here, get Alec, Nate, and Jim's thoughts on this game coming up. Jim, what are you looking at as the big X factor in this game that you're saying, hey, this is where this game will turn. If Dallas does this well or does this poorly, this is where this game turns.
If they can figure out how to slow down Bijan Robinson and Drake London, those two can take it at any time, and that's scary because those are big-time players right there. And they're going to have to do that, and they play well as a team. Cousins doesn't do too much. He's playing within their offense, and that from that standpoint on defense. And their offense is going to have to control the ball. They're going to have to shorten the game. They can't go, Nate has said this before, but they can't give the Atlanta offense too many series. You got to shorten the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, this is an Atlanta team that is last in the NFL in pressure rate. They don't generate a lot. It felt like the Dak and CD connection was starting to click a little bit at the end of the game last week. Is that something where you feel like, hey, there might be an opportunity for them to kind of settle down, settle into their game a little bit? It's not a team that blitzes very much. Is there an opportunity here to gain some confidence for young offensive linemen and get the passing game going in a more prolific way?
You know, I looked at that film, and I'm saying to myself, these guys are just average. They're running an average defense. Mm-hmm. They don't do a lot of blitzing. They don't do a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Every now and then you'll see them slant to the strength. They're not hard to find. It's not going to be a lot of stuff that you have to read. They'll get back there in their coverages and they sit. Remind me much of Green Bay last year, how they just played bland all year long. And Raheem Morris is a defensive-minded coach.
Yeah.
Jimmy Lakes is a decent coordinator. So I'm wondering if they plan just trying to get through the season because they have a high-powered offense, or they guys they don't have it up front. Because they front seven is just average. The Cowboys should come in this game and have some success. Running the ball, play-action pass should be big. They got Bates on the back and the other kid. They got a nice secondary, but they 6 sacks. But they do have, seven interceptions. Yeah. So if you put it up there wrong, they'll get it. Yep. And they just play just good enough, to keep their offense. They keep it. It's like they're keeping their offense in the game.
Yeah.
They get a turnover here, get off the field at the right time because they giving up like 39 or 45% on third down. That's unheard of. Mm-hmm. A defense giving up that much? Mm-hmm. But somehow, somewhere, they just play just hard enough, just smart enough to help their offense win the game.
A really young pass rush here in Dallas against a veteran quarterback in Kirk Cousins, who will make you pay if you make mistakes defensively. If you're in that meeting room right before the game, what are you preaching defensively to your guys to make sure that you can eliminate the big play?
Is first of all, I'm telling these ends to get on the edge because I'm seeing too many guys getting stuck in the middle.
Yes.
And then I'm telling you that the interior guys to get pressure up the middle and get your hands up. If you don't get there, get your hands up against Cousins because Cousins is not going to run the ball. We all know that. But he is accurate, and you got to make sure you got to disrupt him. That's the big thing. Let those ends get on the edges. If you get too high, come back downhill and get people in front of him so he doesn't have a free look at the passing lanes.
You know, there's the George Kittle really made Dallas pay last weekend, and you know, Donovan Wilson, that was not an effective matchup for them. With Kyle Pitts here, guys, I'm curious, how do you look at it? What's the ideal matchup defensively? Where do you hope you can kind of slow him down with a certain defender? Is there anybody in mind that you think, hey, this is my best shot, match him up here?
No. No, I'm being.
Yeah.
See, when you don't have elite player on every level, this is what happens to you. You get exposed. You name any guy. The guy that should get the shot at it is Marquise Bell. He should get a shot at this guy. Are they going to do that? See, Coach Zim is too slow to move. You had an 8-man box. And that guy came up, kill, called the play, ran the tight end, right at Donovan. You know Donovan can't cover. That is not his strong suit. His strong suit is coming downhill, filling a gap. And the more he can do that, his game just get tremendous. But the less he does that, you expose this guy. That was unfair to him. After the second time, that's very much unfair. So now you come into the game, I seen Kyle Pitts actually on film check a defensive lineman. I mean, check him, stop him cold, and go into a route 3 times. Bro, you know how hard it is for a tight end and be effective in his route. He stops a D lineman cold and go into his route, and I'm looking at safeties, hardcore safeties, make business decisions on how they're going to tackle this dude. This is a man full grown. Now, we asking our guy who's not an elite cover guy to stop this? Come on, man.
And you make a good point because the coach's responsibility is to put the player in position to be successful.
Yes.
That is the coach's responsibility. If that's not happening, then either you got to get a different player or you got to get a different coach. That's just the reality of it.
And I love Zim. Zim's my guy, man. Zim is my guy. But that was not fair last week.
Yeah.
See, and then you look at it, too, and that's not a knock against them.
Right.
But Dan Quinn had basically the same players, and he didn't have the injuries.
Yes.
But you got to be honest with it. You got to put players in position. What do they do best? Because that's going to show up. How can they play this? We got to figure out what these players do best and how can we get them to be effective.
Jimmy Johnson was a master.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, just here in a little under 90 seconds remaining. Let's go down the line here. Quick picks for the game. Alec, and then we'll finish up with Jim. We'll go down the line. But, Alec, what are you looking at in this game?
I hate to say it, but I think it's going to be 28-17 Atlanta here. I think they're going to run the ball too effectively to stop.
Nate, what you got?
I got you wanted me to go first? Okay. I got 27-20 Cowboys.
There we go. Nate, what you got?
We'll get them by the skin of our teeth if we can run the ball. We'll get them by the skin of our teeth. If we can't run the ball, whoop, whoop.
Look, I mean, you showed some effectiveness last week.
Yeah.
The touchdown drive. You showed Zeke was able to run the ball in that first half. They had some success, converted a couple third downs. Definitely going to need a little bit more of that because they're going to challenge you there in Atlanta, not just with Bijan Robinson, but also, Algier and what they get with Darnell Mooney in the slot and Kyle. But a lot of great playmakers there in Atlanta that Dallas will have to contend with. Jim Jeffcoat, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Fantastic work from Jim tonight, and fantastic work from Alec Bedford and Nate Newton. And the 6'5" Alec Bedford.
The speedster.
Exactly. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys again next week on the SWBC Cowboys Crosstalk.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?